Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Nancy Waldrop, Vice Chair of WNC Sierra Club, and we are so happy to have you with us this evening. Join for another great Sierra Club program. And tonight we are fortunate to have a Sierra Club favorite, Simon Thompson, here to tell us about wild birds and so much more. And before, there we go. And before getting started with Simon and the birds, we want to take a moment to first ask everyone to silence their phones, please. And to say a thank you to Ollie and UNCA for hosting our monthly programs and all the quality tech assistance they so graciously provide, making it possible not only to meet here, but also to Zoom for those who can't be with us in person. It's Ollie's. Thank you. Yes, they deserve a hand clap. They do, especially the technician. He does a terrific job. It's Ollie's mission to promote opportunities to thrive in life's second half through programs in lifelong learning, leadership, community service, and research. Explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. That's the Sierra Club motto. When you join our local Sierra Club, you join the National Sierra Club as well. And as part of the Sierra Club organization, you will receive a monthly magazine on national issues and projects and be able to participate in a national and state Sierra Club project as well as those here locally. It is our custom at Sierra Club to take a moment at each meeting to acknowledge with respect that the land we are on today, literally beneath our feet, is the ancestral land of the Cherokee. We thank them for protecting our forest and our environment for so many generations. Tonight, like the first Wednesday of almost every month at 7 p.m., we are offering both an in-person experience right here at the Reuter Center, in addition to a Zoom format to share our program, thanks to the great technology at UNCA. Also, prior to our program each month, we typically have a leaders meeting, which is open to anyone interested in helping us determine future programs and other projects. This meeting, held in a classroom upstairs, begins at 5 p.m. and should you be interested in joining us, please contact Judy Maddox at judymaddox15@gmail.com. And now Dave Erb has a couple of announcements about some upcoming EV car shows.
Thanks, Nancy. The Blue Ridge EV Club holds a couple of large EV shows each year, some of them around Earth Month and some of them in the fall. This year we're combining with other people's events for the spring events. And so we have two of them coming up. There's one at the Asheville Maker Fair this Saturday, the 5th. That'll be at AB Tech from about, I think our participation is like 10 to 3. We'll also be part of Hendersonville's Earth Day, downtown Earth Day celebration. That'll also be from 10 to 3. There'll be a fairly wide variety of EVs out there and a lot of people who drive them. If you're curious about EVs, I hope you'll come out.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave is our EV guru if you have any questions about EVs. And Sierra Club also offers extra activities besides our monthly programs for members and guests to enjoy. Two of the most favorite activities of Sierra Club members are our adult hikes and our Kids Adventure Club. If you are interested in participating in either of these programs, please contact, again, Judy Maddox at judymaddox15@gmail.com, or you can also visit our website by Googling WNC Sierra Club to see more information about all of our activities. We especially need a group of rotating or permanent volunteers to participate in our Kids Adventure Club activities. This involves providing opportunities for kids to experience fun activities in nature. These adventures occur at sites such as the North Carolina Arboretum, the Cradle of Forestry, and the Nature Center, all fun places for adults as well. And if you are interested in sharing these fun adventures with kids, again, please contact Judy Maddox at judymaddox15@gmail.com. And to give you a little bit more information about these upcoming opportunities with our Kids Club and our adult hikes are Ed Maggart and David Reed. And David Reed will also be following up his talk about the hikes with some information for you on an upcoming lawsuit over the forestry plan.
Thanks, Nancy. Adventure Kids Club is our local chapter of a national program called Inspiring Connections Outdoors. And we want to get all kids out, but in particular, we're trying to make it possible for kids who don't have access to the outdoors, or maybe it hasn't been part of their family's tradition or culture, to get outside and have fun and feel like it's a place they belong and want to go back with their friends and family, and ultimately will want to take care of. We've been doing programs with kids from some of the city centers in the summer, and I'm kind of excited. I was able to get connected with a fellow named Daniel Magnet, who's the Asheville Parks and Rec outdoor manager and actually oversees all the outdoor programs for all the city centers. So we already have 2 programs lined up, one with the Dr. Wesley Grant Community Center and the other one with Temple Avery Montford, where instead of just one time meeting with a group of kids, we're going to have 3 or 4 meetings. At least one of those will be on site at the center. And another one we're going to have on site, Trudy and her crew from the Arboretum are going to come and bring animals and do a program. And then we'll do a couple off-site. And it's exciting because transportation, no surprise, for any kind of city endeavor is limited. So we're going to be able to do a lot more since some of the programs will be on site at the centers. So we'd love to have you get involved. It's pretty simple to become a volunteer. Fill out a couple of forms. Sierra Club does a background check on you, and within a couple of weeks, then you can volunteer for events that not only you're interested in, but fit your schedule. So you can contact Judy, or please feel free to come and chat with me. David, you want to come on up? We'll talk about the hikes. Yeah, I'll talk about mine, which is actually later in the month. On Monday, April the 28th, I'm leading a hike to the Pink Beds, which, if you've heard of the Cradle of Forestry, it's a loop right behind that. And when you get about 3/4 of the way around the loop, then you can walk about a mile up I think it's Barnett Trail. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And there's a beautiful waterfall up there. So it's about a 5-ish mile hike, but not a terrible amount of elevation loss and gain. And it's called the Pink Beds for a reason. So hopefully by the end of this month, things will start to bloom out. That's not posted on the website yet, but it will be soon. And Dave's got a hike coming up in a couple of weeks. It is on the website. He's going to tell you about.
Thanks, Ed. I just want to give a shout out to Ed, because without Ed, I don't know that we would have a kids program. He's just been dynamite in organizing that. And it's really a model for the whole Sierra Club and how you go about doing these youth programs. So one shout out to Ed for that. So I'm David Reed. I've come back from a period of inactivity in terms of leading hikes, but I'm excited to begin leading a hike on April 18th in Montreat. Montreat, as you know, is just north of Black Mountain. They had damage from Helene for sure. Most of their lower valley trails are open, but the upper valley trails are still pretty much, they're trying to repair those. But I will be leading this little over 2-mile hike on Rainbow Road. Is a moderate hike. We will meet at 9:30 in Black Mountain somewhere, and I'm going to limit it to 10 because of what the Montreat Conference Center wanted us to do. There's very limited trail parking. So if you're interested in that, see me after this or go to our webpage and get in touch with me and let me know of your interest. It should be a fun day. The other bit of news is that it seems to be my life sentence to be involved in forest planning. So the Pisgah-Nantahala National Forest, as some of you know, released a final revised management plan in 2023. And that plan proposed to quintuple the amount of logging and timber operations on the 1.1 million acres of national forest. We think that they violated the law in terms of how they came up with that plan. And so as of last week, we filed the largest of our lawsuits yet, which is called a facial lawsuit, which means we want the forest plan to basically go back to the drawing board and correct all the issues with their modeling and their projections that they use to arrive at such an inflated timber target. So That's basically it. And if you've got an interest in that, I'll be hanging around for a little while, so you can ask me any questions you might have.
And thank you both, David and Ed. And these are two great people to know because they're very committed to the values of Sierra Club, as you can probably already tell. And that brings us to the drawdown slide. We all undoubtedly have a story about when the environment and the need to protect it became real for us. For me, my committed awareness began with the first Earth Day on April the 22nd, and I think it was in 1970. It might have been 1971, but it's a long time ago now. It is a given that all of us, because we are here, want to do what we can to combat climate change today and create a healthier world for the future. The drawdown challenge that you see on the slide helps create a healthier world for the future. And this slide will tell you many ways that you are already taking sustainable efforts to help our environment, as well as ways which that will be easy enough for you to incorporate into your daily life going forward. Drawdown is a great way to be part of the solution that creates a better and healthy environment for those of us here now, as well as for the next to come. So celebrate Earth Day by signing up for the Drawdown Challenge using the blue link on the screen. And hopefully you can take a picture of that. And before we start our program tonight, please remember, as always, we will take questions from the audience here with us, as well as those on Zoom, as soon as the speaker is finished. For those on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat box at any time you have them. And for those that are in the room with us, please hold your questions until the presentation is finished. And also be sure that you use the mic and that you need to wait until you get a mic before you ask your question, because if you don't do that, the people on Zoom are not going to know anything that you've said. So please ask for your help on that. And if you are on Zoom, also please be sure that you are muted to prevent any feedback with the sound system. And again, thanks for doing those two things. Tonight, as mentioned earlier, we are very fortunate to have once again with us Simon Thompson, an international birding expert. Simon has led birding expeditions across several continents through his organization, Ventures Birding Tours. A former resident of Asheville, he is stopping in town to be with us on his return to the United Kingdom from Ecuador. Many of our Western North Carolina birds spend the summers here in our mountains and the non-breeding months in the Central and South America. Many birders, local and around the country, eagerly await the arrival of the spring warblers. These gems of American bird life are bejeweled in bright reds, oranges, yellows, and blue feathers, and many species travel to our area to breed. We also see large numbers traveling through our mountains on their way north to breed in the boreal zone of the far north. Simon will show us photos of a selection of these travelers with thoughts and ideas about how they're coping with our changing world. The evening will be a great opportunity for serious birders and hikers who want to learn the name of the birds they see on their walks. And now it is my pleasure and my honor to turn the program over to Simon Thompson, and let's welcome Simon as he shares his vast knowledge of wild birds with us.
Okay. I'm so used to yelling at people, I'm not sure I need this, but it might help just in case. Let me just double check. Excuse Chris, he's got to make a couple of 3-minute videos. So maybe don't start just yet. Thank you everyone, it's good to be here, it's good to see some familiar faces that have come through for a while, as well as new faces. I'm glad you spoke now, so now I know what I'm going to talk about. Yes. It's not working. It's not working, is it? There is a little red button that says it's a battery. It's very low battery.
Okay, how about, is that better? Good. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Ken. Thank you Rhett for getting all the gadgets together for this evening. So what I decided what Judy finagled and persuaded me to do, said to her, I'm going to do this wonderful program on birds. And she said, and climate change. So I have to thank her and she bribed me. She took me out testing. Well, so I put together pictures of a lot of birds that you can see in the area, a lot of birds that, don't try this again, or should we just do it?
If you want to walk around,
I think I'll just stay here. I think it's going to be simpler.
do you know when I change those?
Can't I just use that?
Yeah, but it's on her presentation.
Ah, yes. Hang on. There we are.
Okay, there you go.
No, we don't need this, do we?
No, you do need it, unless you want to stand behind the podium.
I'll stand behind the podium.
Okay.
Yeah. That's probably simpler. I can lean on the table this way. Anyway, I put some pictures together of birds you're likely to see in the area, some of the birds that are going to move through, as well as Judy said, well, now you're going to show pictures of birds. Where are we going to go and see them? So, of course, since I've been back in Asheville, I've been in and out of town for the last month, maybe sort of sporadically. And I just went to Philadelphia to pick up Chris from the airport, which is where it's very complicated living in two countries. I don't recommend it. We keep our car, which is very convenient, in Philadelphia. So we have to drive to Philadelphia to catch a plane back to England. So far it's working. So we're going to show some pictures of places that I haven't been to since I've been back. I did try to go to Owen Park, but there were people there with yellow hats on who wouldn't let me through. So let's get going. Okay. Chris and I, oh, see, I'm already moving around. Chris and I were in town until about the to play for $1 million. About the 24th of September last year. And then we casually drove out of town and drove up to Philadelphia, only to speak to my mother, and she'd say, have you heard what's happened in Asheville? And I said, haven't heard a clue. And then, of course, had we still been in Asheville, would have been stuck here for a little bit longer instead of flying back to England. But you guys have been through a lot in the last few months, and we do have a little bit of, what do you call it, survivor guilt, as being here not at the time, but knowing everybody that was going through it. So some of the pictures were pretty darn impressive, I'll say that. But we're not going to dwell on things that have happened. We're going to dwell on things that are much, much more positive. And yes, we do look forward to the fresh spring buds. And I spoke to a friend of mine in Iowa yesterday. He said, we've got 3 inches of snow right now on the ground, and tomorrow it's going to be 65 degrees. And okay, but so spring is going to happen very suddenly there as well. But we're talking about spring here, and I've just driven up, I said, down from Philadelphia, and it's barely spring up there. Just a few daffodils coming out. But here you've got the mountains, and they're starting to green up, and a few spring flowers, which I'm sure you'll see on some of these hikes that are being planned. Bloodroot. I've also labeled a lot of the birds so I don't have to say, oh, and that one up in the top corner is a red flanked bluetail or whatever. And I did see some leaves of trout lily just poking up above the surface the other day, but I did see that you've got Scott talking next month. So I'm not anywhere near his league when it comes to botany and wildflowers. He's quite the entertainer. And of course, when we see the red columbine starting to come out, we know that the hummingbirds are soon following. Has anyone seen one yet? No? You've seen a hummingbird already this year? Ah, yes. I was in Shelby yesterday, and my friends there had one at the feeder briefly. I didn't see it. And you'll see it. There's a map I'm going to show you a little bit later that has all the sightings of hummingbirds so far. So the dogwoods just starting. We saw some pink ones yesterday, just starting to break. And the white ones again today. I think with that rain and some warm weather, the next few days are going to be in full peak. But we're going to talk about birds and not this bird. I just put this one in just to make you pay attention. Some of our local birds. You're not going to ever get a rose-faced parrot here unless it escapes from somebody's cage. But some of these birds are tropical birds. This is a golden-winged warbler, and it's not really a North American bird. It breeds in North America, but it's essentially a tropical bird. Spends the winters or the non-breeding season in Central and South America, and comes up here from April to September, breeds, and then returns to its quote-unquote wintering grounds. And we're going to get a lot of different species appearing through the next month or so. Some, like the hermit thrush, winter birds, they're just trickling out. And if you're lucky, you get to hear one sing. A lot of folks say that the wood thrush is has the nicest song of any North American bird. I don't think they've heard a hermit thrush. It's even nicer. Has a lovely fluting song that changes pitch with different introductory notes. It's a lovely song. And so some of these other birds are going to be trickling through: shorebirds, woodpeckers, warblers. And some of them are here already. There's a boat trip that the city of Asheville runs. I gather it's now twice a month. They run a pontoon boat out from the boat dock in Lake Julian Park, and they spend the next couple of hours just gently coasting around the lake. And there's a pair of osprey that are already back, and they're already on their nest, the same nest from last year. So you can sign up and go on any of those trips, and there's no charge to go on them. But the information will pop up in a few minutes. Chimney swifts are also on their way. The first one's already been seen in Charlotte, but again, it'll be usually about the 5th to 10th of April before the swifts start to arrive. Thanks to the National Geographic, this pretty well shows where most North American birds go to in the Central America. Most of them tend to not go much further than the Amazon basin. Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean are predominantly the areas where most of our birds go. And the further south you go, the fewer species and individuals you'll get. And these are the main routes they'll take: through the Caribbean, through the West Indies, up through Central America, and then some brave, adventurous souls that will go straight across the ocean. So, here in our mountains, some will migrate. Well, migration it's very complicated, and I think the more you learn about bird migration, the more there is to learn. And we used to think there were standard migratory flyways and birds used this particular method or that particular method. But now we're discovering that sometimes birds use landforms, sometimes they use stars, sometimes they'll use their internal compasses. So it's all very complex, and we still don't really understand a lot about it. But they certainly do use physical landforms, and mountain ridges can be very, very good places to go. And also you'll see them on lakes and rivers. At the moment, with the weather being a little unstable, pop down to Lake Julian if you can, and there are often loons on the lake. And if you're really lucky, they start calling. And a couple of years ago, I remember seeing a flock of about 60 common loons on Lake Julian, a huge flotilla in the middle of the lake. And every so often, one or two would just start to call. It was quite nice. And of course, they were only dropped down because the weather is unstable. And you get these systems that go through, and the birds that are flying north have to come down, and they come down on lakes, rivers. And of course, as well as lakes and mountain ridges, they'll stream through our forests. Indigo buntings, the little bright blue fellow on the picture there. They arrive round about the 10th to the 15th of April. So anytime in the next couple of weeks, of course, some of these things we don't know, could be coming in early. We're not sure. We'll learn about all this, how wildlife adapts to climate change really over the next few years. These are some of the birds that are starting to arrive, and some have already come through. Tree swallow is the first to arrive. They're already on the Biltmore estate. They're already at Beaver Lake. Blue-winged teal are moving through. That's what we call the spring duck. It's not really a winter bird. They go all the way down to Central and South America, but they migrate through early. Rough-winged swallows back, blue-gray gnatcatchers back. Louisiana water thrush, I gather, is back. Somewhere near the Arboretum is often a good place to see them. Barn swallows are already back. As I mentioned, ospreys, purple martins, pretty well. The only bird I've not seen so far is a broad-winged hawk, but pretty well any day now. I did see a potential one sitting on the wires the other day, but I know in the next week they'll be starting to come in. So let's go through a few of these in a little more detail. Tree swallow. When I first moved to North Carolina, oh, goodness knows, maybe 30 plus years ago, tree swallows did not nest here. And it's only in the last 25 years, they now nest pretty well throughout Western North Carolina and down into the Piedmont. And they're the pretty green and white birds that nest in your bluebird box. And they arrive and often earlier or about the same time as the bluebirds are starting to nest. So stick up another nest box so you can get the bluebirds and the tree swallows. Because the tree swallows, of course, eat an awful lot of flying insects, and they make beautiful nests out of feathers. So once they've finished, you can open the box and look inside and see that lovely nest of feathers. And sometimes you can watch the tree swallows playing with feathers. You'll see the pair flying around. One will drop a feather and the other one will catch it. So watch some fun little interactions. Purple martins, if you want to see them, there aren't that many. I believe they might be back at Biltmore. Yes, yes, I see a nod at the back of the room. So yes, a few of them are back. And there's a few colonies, or a few houses, I should say, at the village, the farm at Antler Village. That's one spot to see purple martins. The other spot is close to here on the river, where the city of Asheville has the water department, water sewage place. There are a couple of martin houses there. And I probably will stop by this week to see if they're back, but they should be. Of course, blue-gray gnatcatchers, little buzzy things, they come through. The first one appears, and then within a few days, they're everywhere, just buzzing away in the treetops. I remember years ago, I was doing a tour to Texas, and we were standing on the border, on the river, and these gnatcatchers were flying over. It was like these little bugs going over our heads, one after the other, all flying north. So blue-headed vireos, they're singing, they're moving north. They tend to winter in the south and maybe in northern Central America. They don't go to the tropics. But green herons, there are already a few back. And warblers. Everyone likes warblers. You're going to get some more pictures of them in a few minutes. But black and white, I did hear one a couple of days ago. I've not seen one yet. Ditto black-throated green and Louisiana water thrush. A lot of these birds come back early because they don't need the leaf cover. They can gather their insects, which they predominantly eat, from between the bark or in the buds or even on the ground. We mentioned birds of prey. Osprey come through early. And I drove down from Philadelphia a couple of days ago, and we came down the Delaware Bay shore. We stopped at a place called Indian River Inlet. It's somewhere just south of north of Ocean City, Maryland. And they have osprey platforms out in the bay, and every platform had 2 osprey on it. So the real estate up there is quite concentrated. Broad-winged hawks come in from South America. They winter all the way down into the Andes of South America, and they'll trickle in. You don't get the big numbers like you do in September when they go through by the tens of thousands, sometimes together. But keep your eyes open for a black and white banded tail on a bird of prey. And there's a fairly small hawk overall. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention, I'm going to give away a couple of day trips to folks in the room, and I forgot to pass the board round. Chris, can you grab that clipboard on the table there for me, please? And that's for my tour company to, if anybody wants to win a day trip on one of our outings, we're happy to let you have one. So I'll pass the clipboard around. Sorry to forget about that. So more birds on the way. Scarlet tanagers around the middle of April. Brilliant red light bulbs in the treetops. Indigo buntings. Both of these are common birds, but like a lot of birds, if you don't know the song, you won't know they're there. Especially, well, indigos, every overlook along the Blue Ridge Parkway has indigo buntings on it, especially if they do what they call view enhancement, where they cut down the trees and the brush goes up. Indigo buntings love it. And there's always one or two, and they sit on the treetops and sing. And it's that fire, fire, where, put it out, put it out. See, that's learning bird songs. We should do another whole program on learning bird songs. Whatever, you can put words to them. You can make bird songs. You can make them appear to what they sound like. You can say the black and white warbler sounds like a squeaky wheelbarrow wheel, or a common grackle sounds like a gate that's being opened and closed and has hinges that don't work properly. Or you can put words to them. Killdeer, obviously, it's just saying its name. And whippoorwill, it's named after its song. So however those are called handles that you put on bird songs. But scarlet tanager sounds, there's no words you can really put to a scarlet tanager song. It's more, you say it sounds like a robin that's got laryngitis. It's got that husky call, and occasionally it does a chick in the middle of it. So we're going to talk about some of these gems in a little more detail. This is what the Brits call them. The Brits think that these American wood warblers are they call them the gems of North American bird life. They're beautiful, they're brightly colored, but they can't sing worth a hoot. Look at the European warblers. They're dull and boring, but they can sing. So you can't be beautiful and have a lovely voice, obviously. So look at these guys. American redstart, black and orange. Canada warbler, yellow and gray with a big black and white necklace. And a black-throated blue warbler with that little white pocket handkerchief. They're all gorgeous, but they can't sing. A black-throated blue does that, I'm so lazy. That's all it can do, really. And the Canada warbler has this sort of chattering as if he doesn't really know what the words are. So, and there's some of these other ones. Cape May warbler. It's a beautiful yellow and stripy job. But his song is a there's nothing much to it. Kentucky, lovely cheery song, and a magnolia, which I think has the most non-memorable song of any North American warbler. It sort of sounds like a hooded warbler that doesn't finish. It goes weeta, weeta, wee. It stops. It doesn't finish like a hooded warbler, which goes weeta, weeta, weetio. So, and Alan I was hoping Alan was going to be here tonight, but he isn't. Alan took this, you'll see a lot of his photos here. Alan took this wonderful picture of a cerulean warbler up on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see one up there this year, unless, I'm not sure when the parkway is going to get open, because all of these birds are a little beyond Bull Gap, and I think it's still closed, and it's going to be closed for a while. And what's a lot easier for us to see, because we just stick up a hummingbird feeder and maybe some flowers, are our local ruby-throated hummingbirds. And this picture on the right, which I took that one, that wasn't one of Alan's or any of these professional photographers. You can see how the light is reflected by the little prisms in the feathers. So it looks like it has maybe a black throat when it's not reflecting, or red, or even brilliant yellow and orange. And this is where the hummingbirds are now. it's called the Hummingbird Migration Map. And people report their hummingbirds. This is spring 2025, and you can see just between the week of March the 24th and March the 30th, they really are coming in. And they tend to move east and west of the Appalachians before they come up into the mountains. So they'll be up in Virginia before they're in Asheville, which is normal because of the elevation. But just go online if you want to see that, and you'll see where people are reporting the hummingbirds. You can't do it in the fall because it doesn't really work in reverse, because you'll report your last hummingbird and then 2 days later, there'll be another one. So you can't really do it in the fall. And as I mentioned earlier, the wood thrush has a beautiful song, and the hermit thrush is even prettier. And if we're lucky, we get to hear one sing on its way, on its wintering grounds, or before it heads north. Or on a good year, you can drive up to Mount Mitchell and early in the morning and just listen to the hermit thrushes as they sing from the spruce trees early in the morning. Surprisingly, and you don't expect shorebirds here in the mountains, and they're not super common, but there are a few places, and one of our most reliable places of late, especially if it rains, is the Biltmore Estate. Right below Antler Village and the river, there are these bottomlands, and when they flood, often they can be full of shorebirds. And this picture was taken, I believe, either at Biltmore or maybe down at Hooper Lane in Henderson County. Petrel sandpipers and dowitchers, just again, if the weather's rotten, they stop and then spend a couple of days at the most before moving on north. Because both these birds nest on the north slope of Alaska. So they've got a long way to go. And that one was all lesser yellowlegs, is that picture I took actually up in Ohio, and they were all just massing on their way north. And a couple of other shorebirds. These are plovers. Plovers, the familiar killdeer, is one that's here all year long and nests in parking lots and all over the place. But these other plovers, currently there are at least a couple of American golden plovers just south of the airport, the Asheville airport, in the fields along Hooper Lane. They're not easy to see, but if you have a telescope and a bit of patience, you'll know you can find them. And again, if the weather's rotten, these birds tend to drop in a little more often. I couldn't resist it. So now you know at least some of the birds that are moving through the mountains in the spring. And you also know some of them you won't find here. But where do we go? Of course, this year it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because some of our favorite places just either are not there anymore, or access is severely limited, or they've changed completely. So birds are pretty adaptable, and they will probably move, find somewhere different, adaptable for the most part. If there's large amounts of damage, of course, they'll have to move. But there are some good helping guides. These North Carolina birding trail guides are very handy. Of course, they're only as accurate as the day where they were printed, but these days online, of course, all of these are online as well as you can buy a print copy. Sometimes when I'm out birding and I'm using the internet, going out finding birding spots, you suddenly can't use the internet anymore. And so you're looking for something. So a couple of good old-fashioned paper maps or books in the car are a good stand-in. And the other thing that we all use, the dreaded eBird. We love it. My partner says eBird, he says, you're an addict. You're an absolute addict. And it is a rabbit hole. And in a good way. I've kept an eBird list every day for the last almost 5 years. I know, I can't bear to stop now. I'd hate to see it just stop. And it's sometimes when you travel and you're going through airports, I have to look out the window to see if I can at least see one bird. Looking out of Heathrow Airport and a gull will fly by or something. But it is a wonderful rabbit hole. But it's also really good for data. And Cornell Lab of Ornithology have done a fantastic job encouraging the obsessive compulsive behavior of bird watchers to get a lot of really good data at no charge. So yes, we like to go to all these different birding hotspots, and we like to see how many birds we've seen or how many other people have seen. So, and why did we miss that Mississippi kite that was there yesterday? So it's as addictive or as casual as you want. This is Buncombe County. It has 100 hotspots. That's a lot. If you go to, we just went to, on our way back from Philadelphia, we went to Halifax County, North Carolina, because I hadn't got any birds there. And I've been to every county in North Carolina now. And it only has, I think, 8 hotspots in the whole county. So it's not very easy to get the birds that you can get here. So we've got 100 counties, 100 hotspots. I've not been to all of them. Some of them are an interstate rest area, just so to encourage people to put birds into the eBird. The most popular spot in Buncombe County by far is Beaver Lake Bird Sanctuary. I did this slideshow, or used some of these slides a couple of years ago, and Beaver Lake had 5,000 bird lists. I looked this week and went, 11,000 cripes, how did that happen? So, and after that, of course, it's down to Lake Julian, Warren Wilson, and the Biltmore Estate are the top 4 birding hotspots in the county. But Beaver Lake is so far ahead of everyone else because it's so easy. You can walk around the boardwalk and pop in a bird list. Here are some of the other spots. And this is from the Blue Ridge Audubon's website. So they've also, what did I do? They've also got some of these spots outlined there so you can see them easily. And as I mentioned, Beaver Lake, it's also got the highest number of species of any where is it? Here, 232 species seen at Beaver Lake, compared with the Biltmore Estate just below at 227. Of course, one is a lot bigger than the other. But these are all the data that you can pull off eBird. And it's quite, as I said, it's quite a rabbit hole. And sometimes I'll go on and I'll go, I need this piece of data. And the next thing I'm doing is, oh, I wonder if I've ever seen this bird that's found only in Central Africa. And they've got wonderful photographs. They've got bird songs. They've got distribution maps. And you can also find out what birds you've seen in various places. It's fun, a lot of fun. So, Beaver Lake Bird Sanctuary, easy, boardwalk. I'm sure everyone in this room has been there. They have about 20,000 visitors a year, and it's only a boardwalk of less than a mile. So the parking lot can be quite busy, but it's a great little spot for the yellow-throated warbler is already back. There are green herons that nest there. There are tree swallows, purple martins drop by, pied-billed grebes on the lake. It's a great little spot for a quick walk. Another great spot, Jackson Park in Hendersonville. It's a city park, and we sometimes have to fight to keep it from being overdeveloped, but it's a great spot during migration to see a large number of birds. And I think a friend of mine and myself still hold the record for the highest number of warblers seen in one day at 32, in one September day. So I've challenged all these young hotshot birders now. Okay, no one's come close. And of course, the Biltmore Estate. And it's funny for people say, well, I've been to the house. And I said, well, once. I said, well, I haven't been to the house for years. I just go to the estate sometimes 2 and 3 times a week because the birding and the walking, it can be really, really good down there. And that sandhill crane picture I actually took in the field just south of Antler Village one day. And you'll see in a minute, we've got a whole list of different walks and events that go on in the area. Other places in our area, Owen Park over in Swannanoa and Warren Wilson College, it's changed a bit. It used to look like that. it now looks like that. I have not been. I would like to go and see it, but you can see there's a great blue heron there in the river there. The birds, of course, adapt quite well, and other species will come in while other species disappear. These are one of the Lake Julian boat trips. It's a lovely pontoon boat. The only thing it misses is a cooler of beer. I know, you can't do that on city property. If this was England, actually, I'll tell you a quick little funny story. I'm a member of the Waveney Bird Club in England. The Waveney is the river that runs between the counties of Norfolk and Suffolk on the East Coast. We have our meetings at the local sports club, and there's a small room, and the tables and chairs are all much closer together. Because it's a sports club, there's a bar in the corner, and you can, during the program, before or afterwards, you can just go up and buy yourself a beer or a glass of wine and sit down and watch the program. I thought, gosh, how civilized. And during the intermission, they serve you dinner. I know. I thought, think about that. Think about that. So anyway, the boat trips are wonderful. They don't cost you anything. They're limited to 12 people. So you have to sign up by contacting the city of Asheville, and the website and information is up a little bit further, which you'll see. Of course, the Blue Ridge Parkway, I had to put it in because it is a major birding hotspot. It, of course, is mostly inaccessible at the moment. I haven't done too much research, so some of you know probably a lot more than I do about what's open and what isn't. It's wonderful, and plenty of birding along its whole length. All the way up to Mount Mitchell, which of course is a Canadian life zone, so you'll get birds that are indicative of the higher elevations all the way up through New England into Canada. Hooper Lane are those fields south of the Asheville airport. They're sod fields, and it's called super sod. It's a big turf farm. Again, if it floods, you get a lot of birds coming in there. We used to walk all the trails down there, but with different management, we now have a dedicated birding trail. It's not the best, but at least we've got it, and we try and treat everything with respect. So it's a great place to see shorebirds down in that area. Another great spot, especially in the winter, is Lake Junaluska. And both white and brown pelicans have been reported on the lake. Rarely, of course. What's more common are the number of ducks, loons, and there's even that building here, this long building. There's a pair of eagles that nest right behind it. So you can stand there and just watch the eagles. Another spot that's currently inaccessible, of course, is Chimney Rock. It's a wonderful facility, lots of great cove forest and birds, but there isn't a bridge or any road, I don't believe, at the moment. I think you can only access Lake Lure from Route 9 at the moment, and I think most of the gorge is currently not even open. But when it gets there, things like worm-eating warbler are really common along some of the trails. Another one of my favorite spots is Graham County, going out west. It's a small, mostly forested county, Robbinsville, and it's got some wonderful habitat, including the wonderful Stokoa Gap Trail. It's a Forest Service trail that just goes and snakes its way through the mountains. It's mostly level, which is even more shocking. So you don't have to be a mountain goat to go along it. And red starts, black and white warblers, red-eyed vireos, the trees are big, but if you miss the first Blackburnian warbler, don't worry, there's another one. And if you miss the first red start, don't worry, there are 10 more. So it's a really, really nice trail, and it's about 2 hours west of here. But there are many, many, many spots, of course, throughout North Carolina, especially Western North Carolina. And we just had a new bird for Western North Carolina today. I just saw photos of a snail kite from Florida that was photographed at the Andrews Rest area in Andrews, North Carolina. So that's kind of shocking. Who knows where it's going to turn up next, but that actually leads into climate change in a minute. So walks, local walks, Biltmore Estate, Chimney Rock Park, Fence, Arboretum, all sorts of places. And all of these, or a lot of these, are at Blue Ridge Audubon's website. Alternatively, you go onto our website and look under community walks, and they're all there as well. So you can find out all the different activities that are going on in the local area. Okay. This one takes, I always have to think a little bit about this. Some of this other stuff I can do in my sleep, but this makes me think. Of course, climate change. I had to do a little bit of digging, but some of it's European and African, and some of it's New World. Climate change, of course, isn't unique to one part of the planet. It's happening all over. The blackcap is one of those European warblers I mentioned that's not very pretty to look at. It's gray with a black cap. Well named. It normally breeds in Western Europe and winters in Africa. A lot of them now have decided that, especially the ones from Germany, are now spending the winter in England, where they visit bird feeders. Instead of going all the way to Africa, they can just hop across to England and have an easy winter, because the winters are getting milder there, and then go back to Germany again, or Poland. And they're discovering that some of their bills are actually getting bigger to cope with maybe different food sources that they're finding in England rather than in tropical Africa. And they also don't have to fly across the Sahara to get there. They just hop across the channel. I was standing on the beach. Our house is just above that little black arrow in England, went just below to the right of the R. And I was we're only about 4 miles from the coast, and I try to go out every day, and I was standing on the beach, just looking around, and this woodcock flew right past my nose inland. It had just flown in from Belgium or Holland, across the ocean and straight in. So it's funny to see migration actually happening in daylight like that. The Audubon Society has done a lot of work on climate change, and you can see all their data, all their research on this Survival by Degrees website that they've put out, and it's well worth going and having a look at. It's a bit sobering. Sometimes I look at it and I go, really? Is that possible? So this is some of the data that they've collected from all the science. And I think a lot of this you can extrapolate from eBird as well. The saw-whet owl, I took this picture. I went with Marilyn and her husband, Mark, to monitor saw-whet owl boxes on the parkway. Back when we actually were allowed to monitor saw-whet owl boxes. That's another can of worms we won't get into right now, but the saw-whet owl is a tiny little owl that has this lovely little bell-like song, and it breeds just along the tips of the high elevations on the parkway. So it's the spruce fir and northern hardwoods forest. So if the temperature goes up, the northern hardwoods forest will get colonized by trees from further up down the slope, and these birds could end up losing their habitat, disappearing completely from North Carolina. Again, a small amount of warming, we could lose all the goldfinches that breed here, and they could end up breeding further north instead. And all of this data is from the National Audubon Society. The Blackburnian, again, it's a boreal bird. So with warming, boreal forests, and these northern birds, once they get as far north as they can go, there's nowhere else left for them. And on a continent, they probably stand a little more chance. But on the other aspects of this is the European bee eater. It's a gorgeous thing. My brother lives in the south of Spain, and from his apartment, you can see Gibraltar, Morocco, and you look behind and you've got the mountains of Spain. So he's on a migration route. He's not a real birder, but he notices, and he'll text me, he'll say, the black kites are coming through, or the storks are arriving, and you see them flying right over his house. and the bee eaters come, and you can be sitting there with a glass of wine, of course, it's Spain, and you can hear this, prr, 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 and those are the bee eaters as they come north, and they just make this little purring sound as they fly overhead. It's wonderful. And they are now nesting in England, which they're still a rare bird, but overall, bit by bit, these birds are becoming more and more common in England. This is a type of harrier, like a northern harrier, called a pallid harrier. Look at that. That's a big range jump from southern Europe up. And there's two that have been in England all winter. One not so far from my house, but I haven't yet managed to go and see it, but it's been up in Norfolk. This is its second winter coming in to spend the winter there instead of going to Africa. And when I left England 30 plus years ago, this was a very rare bird in England. It's like a snowy egret. Now I've seen them over my mother's house flying around. They are very common. So herons and egrets are the vanguard of what's going on with climate change. They're big, very noticeable birds, and they're moving forward. And great egrets used to be rare here in Buncombe County. We see them in cattle egrets. There was a flock of cattle egrets last year on the Biltmore estate. So these things are happening more and more, these southern egrets and herons. There's a couple more European. This is a pied avocet, which is again, a southern European bird that's moving into parts of the UK. And some of these more highly migratory birds are having a more of a hard time. A couple of tropical examples. This is Papua New Guinea, which of course is a very mountainous island. This bird here, and it's a fancy thing, it's called a crested berry pecker. I hope it eats the berries as well as pecks them, but it breeds high in the mountains, and once the weather warms and the habitat changes, it's got nowhere to go. And that's another fancy little robin. There's a lot of different robins over there. Of course, probably totally unrelated to American robins. But again, once these high elevation birds lose their habitat, they've got nowhere else to go. This one I have seen. This is another tropical bird found only in the state of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. It's not a very bright bird. It's sort of a green robin-shaped thing called a gray-winged cotinga. It breeds in a very, very small area on the top of some very tall mountains. But there are only probably a few hundred birds left. And when that warms, it's going to lose all its habitat and will be gone off the top of the mountain. Closer to home, this is a common bird. If you go to Costa Rica and look at birds down there, the collared redstart, again, is now finding breeding in a lot of higher elevations than it was many years ago. And here on the Blue Ridge Parkway, when I first moved to Asheville, I would go, Craven Gap, let's go and see some cerulean warblers. They don't nest at Craven Gap anymore. You have to go at least another 5 miles up the parkway towards past Bull Gap and continue on before you find your first cerulean warblers now. So it's hard to find data, but this I've noticed since I've been here, the cerulean warblers have moved up the parkway. And it's going to be interesting to see when we can get back to Bull Gap. I hear a lot of trees have gone down there, where they'll be. I'm sure there'll still be some in the area or in nearbys, but they may end up moving a little bit further up the mountains. So yes, I'm just going to let you read that. And some unbridled propaganda. And Dennis, are you here? Yes, yeah, that picture was one of the UNCA great horned owls. No, it was taken up by the university. Yeah, speak to Dennis about that and about that. And Thanks to all these folks who let me use their photographs in this presentation. And thank you. If you have any questions.
You have questions, raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you.
Hello, Simon. I've been out west lately and they have a concept called islands in the sky. Are you familiar with this? I don't really know that we have a similar program that follows the Appalachians to look for high elevation sanctuaries for birds to migrate north. Do you know of one?
No,
I think we need one.
I don't know. Tell me more. I thought you meant sky islands, as in the islands in Arizona that these mountains.
Yes,
And what then? And they're working on programs with them, within them.
right. What they're doing is
Uh-huh.
making their land conservation companies are buying mountaintops
Mhm.
and that are then preserved for birds to migrate north and south.
Well, I mean, the idea is good, but it's not, if climate change affects those mountains, the birds are not going to be there regardless. So, but it's going to be good for birds regardless, I know. Most of the high elevations, certainly in North Carolina, are all protected anyway within the national forest and parks, but certainly in the east they are. I don't know if any other programs per se are specifically working on that. No, I don't know, sorry.
Real quick question,
Yes.
Simon. How many bird species are there worldwide and how many have you?
Uh-oh, uh-oh. This is when I'll get the stink eye from the back. Well, I haven't seen them all yet. There are about, I think it's over 10,500 now. And I've seen 7,500. So I'm still working on it. I've still got a few to go, but it gets harder and harder. I just went to Guatemala for about, I think, the 5th time, but we went to some mountains in the west and I got 5 birds. Yes. But I enjoy the older I get, the more I enjoy just going out and seeing whatever I see. But the obsessive compulsive part still plays. So now instead of just seeing a new bird, you go and say, oh, a new county. Let's start finding birds in this new county. So you can play all sorts of games, but I do like to see some new birds overall. Admission of guilt.
Simon, I've got a question about the app.
Yes.
We're now called Birdcast.
Yes.
Which, I wake up in the morning, I have my shade grown coffee, and I'll check the nightly migration data. And for example, last night, it was not a huge night, but it was a few 100,000 possibly. And I've always wondered, when you see that number, is there any percent you could say is going to land in Buncombe County on any given night? I would guess it's maybe
You
10%.
can, I think, more often in the fall. In the spring, I find, especially early, a lot of these birds are moving through en route to their breeding grounds. So, for example, you don't often find a bird en route because it's only got to come across the Gulf or come up from Florida or wherever it's wintering and ends up at Chimney Rock Park. I don't often see a black-throated green warbler on the way. But in the fall, they tend to move through in vast numbers because there are a lot of young birds and they move through at a slower pace. In the spring, often they're in a hurry to get to their breeding grounds. As opposed to knowing what you're going to get, often the birds don't come through randomly. They come through, I think at the moment, the species that are going through on Birdcast are probably northbound sparrows. Those are what I would say would be going north now. White-throated sparrows, juncos, hermit thrush, red-breasted nuthatch, all of these winter birds we've had that are now starting to head north bit by bit. The birds that are coming in will be black and white warblers, parulas. When they start to come in, They come into Florida in just swarms and then start to come north. In the fall, there's a fun thing you can do, assuming you've got good hearing. Go out the hour before dawn and listen. You can hear, or use the Merlin app. That's really good. Use the Merlin app and hold it up. It'll identify mostly accurately. There are some errors, of course, because it's what I call artificial help at times. Listen to the birds calling. They're not singing, of course, they're doing simple bird calls. And those calls are for flock contact to keep the loose scattered flocks together. And often you can hear the thrushes, and you'll hear Swainson's thrush, wood thrush, gray-cheeked thrush calling. And they come down. They don't keep flying once it gets light. They'll come down into the woods around you. So if you're hearing Swainson's thrushes just before dawn, there's a sure set that some will come down around your yard. And then you can actually go out and find them. And that's pretty neat. But knowing which ones by birdcast, it's a little hard to say whether they're moving through or coming in. I can't tell.
Got a couple of questions from online.
Yes.
First is, what happens to birds during hurricane and fires? Do they get caught in the eye of a hurricane?
Yes, they do. Birds get caught in the eyes of a hurricane all the time. And that's why you end up with pelicans inland and terns and gulls way inland and huge numbers of North American birds ending up in Ireland or Wales. Of course, there's an awful lot of birds that don't make it. You can see there was a hurricane that went through Alabama a few years ago, and it killed in the fall about 20,000 purple martins. So, but the population can stand this, and it does. So, but with the advent of bigger, stronger hurricanes, who knows? It's difficult to know. There have been, of course, incidents on some islands in the Caribbean where a hurricane can come through, just devastate an area, and they've found a couple of birds that have just simply never come back. So they can be really detrimental that way. But if a hurricane comes through, I must admit, there's guilt again. I race around to the local lakes and a hurricane comes through. Not like Helene, of course, something a little milder that occurs during the regular hurricane season. We've had black skimmers here. We've had black-necked stilts. We've had sooty terns on Lake Julian. These are all birds that get swept in. They don't fight the hurricane. They get swept along with it. They land, often readjust, and then go back the way they came. So, of course, some birds will be exhausted, and other birds, seabirds, are often quite capable of realigning. Yes. Yes, sir.
What are your favorite birding spots in Costa Rica and Ecuador?
Ooh, there's lots of them. In Ecuador, which I've been to lots of times, I love the mountains. Anywhere east, the neat thing about Ecuador, the east slope and the west slope, the mountains, the Andes run up the center of the country. Birds are different on each side. So we've done this trip, we call it the Hummingbirds of Ecuador. You can go up in elevation all the way up the east slope and then down the west slope. And every time you go down, all the hummingbirds are different. It's really a lot of fun. Again, if you go on to eBird, you can put in whatever county or province you're going to. Let's say you're going to Quito, the capital. You put in Pichincha, which is the province where Quito is, and you can come up with the hotspots that have recorded the most birds. That's how you can use that for. Costa Rica, again, it's pretty similar. You can do exactly the same thing. You learn a lot about provinces and counties and state capitals doing this. I know virtually every county seat in North Carolina now. Some of them you drive through and you go, oh, was that it? So there are some small ones. Yeah.
Another question from the online folks. They say since Helene, there've been a huge flock of fish crows around our neighborhood in South Asheville. And their question is it possible that Helene actually caused them to come there, or is there a relationship there?
I think yes and no. Fish crows have been moving into the area for the last 20 years. There used to be a couple at Lake Julian, and we'd go down to Lake Julian to see them. Now they're at the Ingalls here on Merriman Avenue. They're at Beaver Lake. They're everywhere. They're coming in. I think it's natural that they've come in over the years. It could be from climate change. It could be the fact that crows are just super adaptable. But I would think it has to be something to do with climate change because they weren't here in the numbers when I first arrived here. Helene could have produced more watery habitats for a while, which fish crows essentially like. They tend to be around water a lot more than American crows. So I would say it's probably a combination. Great. Well,
Got two other comments from online. One is that those of you that get Sierra Magazine, if you remember, you get their magazine. David Reed, where's David? Over there, is featured in the latest issue. So congratulations to David for that, for all of his work on forest. And lastly, we had great folks saying, what a wonderful presentation.
thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you. I'm going to pull up 2 day trips from that list. I can't do it right this second. I'll have to do it tomorrow because I tried. My laptop that I brought with me this is Office. Anyway, I'm not that technical. I try to print out gift certificates and I could print them out, but they weren't coming out right. So I'm just going to have to email whoever wins a gift certificate tomorrow. So I'm going to have to do it that way instead of just presenting it now. I'm sorry about that. I just couldn't do it. And I was also having to, the email list, I had to email to a friend of mine's computer, which is an Apple and mine isn't. I had to email it to them, open it, reformat it, and then print it. It was, it sorely tested my technical knowledge, that did. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Simon. I mean, this was great. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you so much. A lot to learn. Also, we need to mention our program for next month, which is the Spring Wildflowers of Southern Appalachia on May the 7th, same time, same place, right here. And if you could help us by taking one of these flyers to a favorite coffee shop that lets you put up community events, we would greatly appreciate that. And just see me after the program if you are willing to do that. So thank you very much and hope to see you this time next month for Spring Wildflowers. Thank you.
Here, I've got to.
You never have time to watch TV.
Occasionally, yes.
There's a new program, I think it's on Netflix, called